Thank you. Good morning. Hey, my name's Rebecca Fisher, and on behalf of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our hybrid worship service. Come as you are this morning. Please feel welcome to arrive here as your whole self, with all of your identities, your ideas, your troubles, your triumphs, your traditions, your thoughts, your emotions, your love. As Unitarian Universalists, we value and encourage the individual search for truth and meaning while we work in community to build a more compassionate, more just world for everyone and everything. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we hope we can be your companions along the path. If you'd like to learn more about what's happening at First Unitarian, please do visit our website, firstuuwilm.org. That's all, firstuuwilm, all smushed together. And sign up for our e-news so you'll receive information about everything that's going on at First U. If you've read our e-news, you know that today, after the service in our parish hall, is our celebratory finale for our auction. There'll be a raffle. You can pick up the things that, Linda's waving tickets. You can pick up the tangible items that you've won, and there is a really delicious-looking bake sale that will benefit our youth group. And they baked the stuff themselves, I understand. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship with some beautiful guitar music.
So as Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate the wisdom from many religious traditions. We draw from these sources of our living tradition, especially during this time of year when we honor many of the festivals of light. May we honor the light. May this light be a torch for those who are lost and need to find their way out of darkness.
May this light bring warmth to those who feel the bitterness of the cold on their bodies, in their hearts, within their souls.
May this light brighten the spirits of those who are sorrowful, illuminating the path to hope and joy.
May this light kindle the creativity of artists of all kinds who need inspiration.
May this light bring clarity to places of confusion and reveal the truths that need to be known.
May this light fuel the energy of those who wish to act to change their lives for the better or change the world to improve it for all.
May this light illuminate the places of brokenness that need to be healed in ourselves and others and the world, and be a beacon on the journey to wholeness.
May this light shine peace upon those in conflict all over the planet, replacing hatred, ignorance, fear, and hatred with understanding, courage, and love. If you have a chalice at home, this is the time to get ready so you can join us in lighting it as we say these words by Kimberly Ann Tomchak Carlson. We are a people of memory. As inheritors of our ancestors' legacy, we hold their stories tenderly, gleaning wisdom from diverse journeys, united in hope for the future. Guide us to trust in love as we kindle this flame together. And now please rise in body or spirit or both, and join us in singing hymn number 221, Light One Candle. Light one candle for the Maccabee children, with thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. And light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering the pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, that anger won't tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. What is the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died. When we cry out, they've not died in vain. Have we come this far, always believing that justice could somehow prevail? This is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. They're making me get my steps in this morning. My doctor will be happy. Please join me in affirming our mission. The Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
As I've already mentioned, as Unitarian Universalists, we draw from many religious traditions. We call upon the sources of our living tradition. This is very obvious during this time of year when so many of our religious traditions have celebrations, celebrating with including the lighting of candles. And this morning, we will continue to light the candles in the Advent wreath, which has also been a ritual among the children in our religious exploration program. Ruth Meddy will now light the 3 candles in our Advent wreath. Ruth let me know a few weeks ago when we first lit the Advent candles on the first Sunday of Advent that this was a tradition in her home as a child in Germany. So thank you, Ruth.
Although the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah is a week away, we want to honor this part of our sources of our living tradition today by lighting the shamas, the servant candle. This candle serves to light each of the other candles in the menorah during the 8 nights of Hanukkah. May this light nourish and replenish all those who work in the world to provide assistance to others. I'm going to read the story for all ages, so I'll need it up on the teleprompter if you please. Thank you. This is a story called The Blessing by Penina Schramm. A stranger came to a small town on the 5th night of Hanukkah. It was cold and wintry. Can you feel it? Maybe some sleet? He walked slowly past many houses, looking carefully at each one as he passed by. He called out softly, "Here is the house I am looking for," when he spied a tiny house with a menorah in the window made from, what do you think it was made from? Gold? Silver? Tin? It was made from potatoes. The stranger knocked gently on that door. In a moment, the door opened a crack, and behind it stood a woman. "What do you wish?" asked the woman. "I'm a stranger here in town, and it is a cold and wintry night. May I come in to warm myself?" asked the stranger. "The synagogue is dark and cold because everyone went home to celebrate Hanukkah." "Oh, yes, come in. It would give me great honor to invite you to join us in our Hanukkah celebration," responded the woman. In the small room that the stranger entered sat 5 children gathered expectantly around the table. "Mama, who's here?" asked the oldest child. Mama, when will the latke kugel be ready?" another child asked. Right away," answered Mama as she invited the stranger to take a seat. All the children stared at the guest, thinking to themselves, "Who's this stranger? Why is he here? Who invited him to share our latke kugel when there's hardly enough for us?" The stranger read their thoughts from looking at the children's faces, but the youngest, little Rivka, didn't have those thoughts. Rather, she was just happy to have more company. So she ran over to the guests with open arms, calling out, "Welcome to our Hanukkah celebration." You want to try that? Welcome to our Hanukkah celebration. Mama opened the oven, and the room instantly filled with the delicious aroma of a large potato latke, almost like a kugel. So kugel's like a potato casserole. It's really rich and deep, and yummy. And a latke's more like a pancake, but this was more like a big chunk of brown, crisp, savory latke. Mama took the latke kugel carefully out of the oven with a long-handled paddle and placed it on the table. The children couldn't wait to have their favorite Hanukkah food. The latke kugel was big enough for 3, maybe 4 people to eat. But now it would have to serve 7. Mama took her place at the Hanukkah table, and they all joined in the blessing, including the stranger. The stranger watched each family member in turn, smiling mysteriously. Finally, Mama cut the potato latke kugel, dividing it most of it equally, except for one piece that was bigger than the rest, and one piece that was much smaller. She gave the large piece to the stranger, and the small piece she placed on her own plate. And the rest went to the children. Well, they ate as slowly as possible to make it last as long as possible. And after eating, they sang some Hanukkah songs while they cleared the table. And then one of the children got the dreidel to play. And after a while, Rivka turned her attention again to the guest and asked, "Why did you come to our house this evening?" And the guest replied, "As you see, I am a stranger in this town. I arrived too late to go to shul, so I went searching for a Jewish home. Well, on Hanukkah, I knew I could recognize a Jewish home by the menorah in the window. And when I saw your beautiful menorah, I knew that this was the house I wanted to visit during my stay here in your town." "Beautiful? It's not even a menorah, it's potatoes," cried the oldest child, not hiding his shame. "It's all we have," replied Mama. "We can't afford a menorah made out of metal. Maybe next year." And her voice faded away. The stranger saw a tear fall from her eye. "But that's why I came to this house," continued the stranger. "This is a menorah as real as any other, made of silver or gold. It fulfills the mitzvah of burning oil with a wick to celebrate our Yom Tov. But it is a menorah filled also with the love of mitzvah. When you have money, then it's easy to buy a menorah. But you and your mama had to make your menorah. You chose your potatoes carefully. You cut open those potatoes carefully. You counted how many halves you needed for 5 wicks and a shamas. And you put them in the window for all the world to see. What could be more beautiful than that?" And then the stranger said, "Since this is the 5th night of Hanukkah, it's the tradition to give Hanukkah gelt. And to each child he gave shiny coins, and to Mama he gave his blessing." And the next morning when the family awoke, the stranger was gone. Mama went to the flour barrel, thinking how she only had a few cupfuls left for a small loaf of bread. When she lifted the cover, to her surprise, she found it full. Mixed in with the flour, so it was full of flour, but mixed in with the flour, she also found, what do you think? Gold coins. And when she checked the potato bag, it too was overflowing with potatoes and more gold coins. And Mama laughed to herself, "Our guest must have been Elijah the prophet." That night, Mama and the children prepared 6 halves of potatoes and the shamas, carefully pouring oil into each scooped out center, placing a wick into each. And they lit the wicks and sang their Hanukkah songs, watching with pride the flickering lights of their precious potato menorah. So,
if I can sing out the children.
yeah, please join us in singing the children to their RE classes. Thanks for listening. You shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be, for you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be.
Thank you, Rebecca, for filling in for that story. Thank you. Let's let this time of prayerful meditation be an invitation to stillness. Join me now as we attend to the inner wisdom of Hanukkah. May we hear the invitation to stillness as we let go of our striving, if even just for the briefest time. May we enter the place of inner noticing and let the judging slip away without much effort. May we allow the possibility of miracles arriving even when we don't expect them, even when they stretch our understanding of what is doable. The everyday contains miracles enough. Yet when we are in the stillness, when we are in the noticing, when we are in the allowing, our eyes open, our hearts may unfold, and our imagination may expand. Let us join now in a time of shared silence, and during this shared silence today, let us attend to whatever concerns we may be holding in our own heart for ourselves, for those we love and care about, or for the concerns of our world that we share. So let us enter this shared silence together. If you are holding a particular concern in your heart this morning, you need not hold it alone. If you have a particular care for yourself, someone you love, or our world, let's speak it into this room so that others may hold it alongside of you, or write it in the chat so that you can feel our companionship during this time our prayers of the people. So what are the concerns that you're holding in your heart that you would like to express in this room aloud? May all the names that were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day. A few weeks ago, one of our newest members remarked in a meeting with me and a longer-term member, "I was surprised you weren't wearing a green stole on this first Sunday of Advent." Indeed, I had put on a blue stole that Sunday, and having been raised Roman Catholic, in the tradition where liturgical colors for each season of the church year was a thing, I was beginning to feel somewhat exposed for my liturgical ineptitude or my liturgical laziness. The other longer-term member that was in the meeting intercepted, I should say, "Oh, as you use, we're not all that serious about those kinds of things." The response seemed to suffice. Now, please keep that particular wisdom, practical wisdom, in mind, as I acknowledge that in order for us to fit in several of the religious traditions of this season, last week, Bodhi Day, and engaged Buddhism. Next week, we're doing winter solstice, and on Christmas Eve, you guessed it, Christmas. This particular year, the winter solstice, Christmas, and Hanukkah dates have collided. And so Hanukkah won't actually be celebrated until the evenings of December 18th through the 26th this year. But today, in anticipation of Hanukkah, we are reflecting on some of the universal meanings of Hanukkah, and in particular, a message I believe that resonates in many of our lives, whatever our religious persuasion. Notice I've got like a multicolored stole on today. I got all the seasons covered. So Hanukkah, as you know, is part history and part story. At different times in the Jewish tradition, the history of the uprising against repression of religious liberty and freedom was emphasized. And at other times, the story of the miracle of Hanukkah was emphasized. Again, both history and story can hold meaning for us. The history, as you know, is based on the revolt of the Maccabees against the rule of the Hellenistic-influenced king who had decreed that all the local religions, including Judaism, be rooted out in his kingdom. If any Jews dared to continue any of their rituals, including the Shabbat, they did so under the penalty of death. So in their place, pagan rituals and sacrifices became the order of the day, not only in shrines throughout the land, but even in the holy temple of the Jews. Some Jews who admired the customs and the cultures of the Greeks followed these new decrees of the ruler. Other Jews were outraged, not only by the decrees, but by their fellow Jews who were cooperating, and it seemed in such a way that they recklessly discarded some of the sacred traditions of the Jewish people. So that's part of the history of Hanukkah, a word which means dedication and honors the rededication of the temple after it was recaptured by the Maccabees. And there's the story of Hanukkah. And as the story goes, you know, when in the process of cleaning out the temple of its debris and preparing for the rededication of the temple, the Jews discovered only one bottle of oil that had not been defiled. And in this bottle was enough oil for only 1 day's lighting. Yet even with that short supply, they decided to proceed. And behold, as the story goes, the lamp continued to burn miraculously for 8 days. As Rabbi Arthur Waskell explains, the single bottle of oil symbolized the last irreducible minimum of spiritual light and creativity within the Jewish people, still there in its worst moments of apathy and idolatry. The ability of that single jar of oil to stay lit for 8 days symbolized how, with God's help, that tiny amount could unfold into an infinite supply of spiritual riches. So there is meaning for us in both the history and in the story of Hanukkah. We can find meaning in the history of Hanukkah to remind ourselves that even in some of the darkest moments of history, resistance to oppression and spiritual defiance are necessary for us to participate in order for us to participate in the ongoing creation of our world. And I also believe that the story of Hanukkah reminds us to make it an everyday practice, to look not just at what is, a single jar of oil, but also what could be. There's a reason that this story continues to be told, because I believe we need this story. We need this reminder. Hanukkah is our reminder, I believe, that we live by both reason and imagination, and that neither alone is enough. So this universal message implicit in the Hanukkah story has led me to call upon some of our members to tell some version of their own experiences of a time when. It could be a time when it seemed that you were not enough and you discovered more than what seemed possible. Or it could be a time when you were overwhelmed by a personal challenge or a particular challenge in our world, but yet you discovered something more than you could have anticipated. Or a time when the reasonable thing may have been to give up hope, to give in to despair, but something else occurred, and you dared to strike new sparks. And so Lois, Eloise, and Judy and I will each be sharing a story related to this universal message. And before each person tells their story, they will light a candle in this menorah to symbolize that within our lives there can be more light, more hope, more possibility than reasonableness may cause us to see. And we honor that something more by lighting a candle. Lois.
Thank you, Larry, for this invitation. Increasingly, over the last few years, I have felt frustrated by what felt like an inability to have any impact on the growing problems in our world. But I've had two experiences recently that have reinforced, however tiny the light of my contribution is, if I keep shining, it can have some impact. In November, I joined a group that wrote postcards to folks in Georgia, reminding them to vote. But I wondered if those postcards really had any effect. When I heard that Senator Warnock won the referendum, I felt like just maybe someone who had read my card was motivated to vote, and along with the contribution of many others, enough light shined to make it happen in a state that traditionally had been red. Boy, did I cheer when I heard those results. That was great, but the second experience was so significant, it still has me feeling emotional, so I'll ask for your understanding here. A few weeks ago, Chaplain Reverend Dr. Chris Antal came to our church and spoke about the moral pain that veterans experience as a result of what we all require them to do in the service of our country. As you can see, I was very moved, as I'm sure many of you are. I decided to respond to the invitation that Chris extended to participate in a healing ceremony that was held this past Thursday at the Veterans Hospital in Philadelphia. I didn't know what to expect. I was motivated to learn how our congregation might take action to address the moral pain of veterans here in our community. I also hoped that my presence at the ceremony might, in some small way, demonstrate support and ease someone's pain. Veterans and non-military attendees like me had an opportunity to name and light a candle in remembrance of a veteran they were thinking of. But the ceremony also included a caring circle in which we, as citizens, formed a circle around the veterans and laid a hand on their shoulders to communicate our acceptance of responsibility for the pain that they experience, as well as to show them support that they're not alone in their healing process. As I stood behind and reached out, I wondered how much my hand resting on this young man's shoulder would really mean, until I felt him reach out around and put his hand on mine. I could feel his shoulders moving and see his head bob with silent crying. It made me very glad I went that day. We were given one of those candles to take with us, and I keep it lit at home to remind me that my light could possibly be a beacon just when the darkness seems overwhelming. I'm reminded that however my small light might be, it can drive away some of the darkness. I'll never know if any of my postcards actually got read and motivated somebody to vote. I'll never know what my attendance at that healing ceremony meant to the veterans there. I'll never know what my participation in Ilya will result in for some young person. But I can tell you, that soldier's hand on mine will always come to mind when the darkness seems overwhelming. It whispers to me that this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, and hope that it leads to many hands I may or may not ever feel, but hope, feel comfort and support.
Thank you, Lois and Eloise.
Thank you, Lois. Well, I'm a nervous wreck, so bear with me. I had to write it all down. It's good to see you all. It is an honor to be here, to be able to speak for these few minutes. Albert Camus said, "Without beauty, love, or danger, it would almost be easy to live." I'm going to travel in a time machine with you to 1963. At that moment in time, all, including my life, was nearly lost. I just turned 20, 1 month from graduating college, if I could pass the swim test, mandatory test, that I had frequently failed. The swim test. Early one morning, driving on the highway to my student teaching school, the brakes of the car, then the steering, failed. I crashed into New York traffic on the highway, crossing the grassy divider. The windshield glass broke into my eyes, but I heard a voice say, "Help is coming." Fortunately, the hospital was a few hundred feet away. The ambulance personnel extracted me from the demolished car. In the hospital, visitors came, doctors, nurses, and intensive care eased my pain as I lay in critical condition. Another student teacher at the school from a different college came. And for the next 5 years, we had both been hired to come in September to teach. For the next 5 years, she drove me to and from the school. A doctor's note, "Waive the swim test." And I graduated. In my first year of teaching 8th grade, I believed every student could do better than he or she or anyone could expect. In 1968, 5 years, as I packed my desk to leave full-time teaching for the birth of my first child, the door opened, and a young man, just graduating the high school next door, entered. He had been a student in my first year. He was in what was called a slow-tracked class, where young teens were not expected to achieve. He came to say, "You changed my life." What survived in 1963 was only the beginning. Strangers and friends with goodwill gave grace, hope, and caring. Albert Camus said, "Real generosity toward the future lies in giving all in the present. Thank you.
So thank you, Eloise. Judy.
I asked for a telephone book, but we didn't have them anymore. So can you hear me? Okay. Again, like everyone else, I am grateful to be invited this morning. Let there be light. 4 years ago, at the beginning of May 2018, I received an early morning telephone call that I was no longer in remission. My lymphoma was back. I made an appointment for 2 days later with my oncologist, but I didn't make it. Instead, I ended up in the ER 24 hours. Couldn't breathe. The lymphoma was causing pressure on my lungs. After draining a quart of fluid from my body at my left lung, I was admitted to the hospital where my doctor strongly advised that I should begin chemo immediately, sort of do it or die. So I did. But the chemo did not go well. I spiked a fever of 103, needed oxygen again, and was delirious. Then I got something called the rigors, which means that all the muscles and tendons in your body spasm simultaneously. I was actually bouncing off the bed until the nurse got into the bed to hold me down until the doctor administered the antidote, which knocked me out. Thank God. I spent a couple of more days recovering, and then a few days after that, I woke up in the morning with fiery pain in my mouth. And I asked the nurse if I had thrush, because that's not uncommon to get with chemotherapy. She checked my mouth and said, no, and called an infectious disease specialist. He took some samples and some blood. He returned 2 days later with several pages from a medical journal explaining my problem. I had an overgrowth of H. pylori. Now, some H. pylori is really good for a healthy gut, but apparently not in the massive amounts that I had. And then he explained that new research revealed that H. pylori was now a cause of lymphoma. So I would begin a purge to wipe out the bacteria and continue it for 10 days after I left the hospital. And now I was glancing down the papers that he had given me as he started to walk out. And I started to shake and cry. And the doctor turned around and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Well, yes, but it says here that H. pylori is now correlated with another disease, TTP, the disease my daughter died of." I didn't know how to think about that. It took my breath away. Several days later, I left the hospital with a prescription of 6 different medications to take for the next 10 days to kill the H. pylori. The purge was beautiful. It was brutal. I lost a lot of weight, and I lost my vision for part of one day until they could adjust the medications. By the way, this was going on when I was home alone. But by the 8th day, I was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I thought, and then the gut pain and the bleeding got worse. So back I went to the ER. My son and daughter-in-law spent the night with me waiting for the test results. Early the next morning, we were told that I had salmonella poisoning. Once again, I was admitted to the hospital, this time to the infectious disease ward. As the nurse, gowned in what we now know as full COVID regalia, was helping me into bed, I looked up at a whiteboard. And they have a whiteboard in most hospital rooms now, tells you the date, the time, and usually the staff that's going to be working on you. Now, with all this commotion and sickness, I was losing track of time. But I realized I was going to be in the hospital on Memorial Day, and I started to shake and cry again. The nurse asked me if I was in pain, and I said, well, yes, but not the way she thought. And I explained that I would be in the hospital over Memorial Day weekend. And that was going to be unbearable because my daughter had died in that hospital 14 years before, and that my first grandchild had died in that same weekend, Memorial Day, 5 years later. The nurse, her name was Carol, sat down with me on the bed, cradled me in her arms as if I were her child, holding me to her breast, and began to sing in an amazing contralto voice, Lord God Almighty, have mercy on your wounded children. I could feel the music in her body and my being. As her voice reverberated in the room, I felt that she was rocking me and singing me back to life. I made it through and left the hospital on June 1st, the day my daughter died, 14 years before. I went home to my son and daughter-in-law's house to recover. They were wonderful and kind and overwhelmed. Family caregiving is a nearly impossible job. Most of you know that. And I still had 7 more months of chemo to go. I was exhausted and weak and afraid, and I was afraid it was impossible. So I called church, you, and asked for help. And for the next months, through the next year, people volunteered to drive me back and forth to my cancer treatments, up and down 95 to Christiana, and sometimes to Penn. My family, my friends, this church showed up for me in one of the darkest times of my life. This holy day celebrates a miracle, the light of possibility in impossible situations. While I don't believe in miracles, I know I experienced a kind of miracle. The miracle of everyday, simple human kindness. Everyday, simple human kindness. We can't make the pain, sorrow, and losses we all suffer disappear, not for ourselves and not for others. No magic wands. But we can light the way out of darkness with everyday compassion and kindness for ourselves and for each other. And because we are all wounded children, we all need mercy and kindness. Let there be light.
So thank you, Lois, Eloise, and Judy. I suspect that your stories elicit in us also memories of times when we recognize that beyond reasonableness there was a hope. Beyond the place where we felt we had reached the end, we found sometimes a new beginning. So what I'd like to do is for us to pause as we conclude this service and think about a time when there would have been reasonable reasons that would have led you to despair or to give up, but you persisted anyway. Can you think of a time like that? Or a time when you discovered more than what would seem possible? Take a moment to think of your own story and give me a nod if you thought of something that fits that description. I'm going to ask Lois if you won't mind to light some candles in recognition of those nods. Maybe you'll find a way to share your own story with someone in this congregation today or in the coming weeks. May these stories continue to illuminate hope within us and among us. May we open ourselves to a relentless imagination and an openness to possibility, not for these holidays alone, but for every day that we need them. As Rabbi David Aaron reminds us, we are to fill our eyes with the light of Hanukkah, so that when Hanukkah is over, we will continue to see our lives in this special light. So may it be.
Hanukkah is a beautiful holiday, celebrating religious freedom with the message that resistance is not futile. Candle lighting rituals, light in the darkness, all that. Chocolate coins, really greasy food. But you know, it's not a major holiday in the Jewish calendar. When I was growing up, Christmas occupied a decent part of my psyche, a fair chunk of envy and resentment directed towards the most wonderful time of the year. Being Jewish, I've actually felt angry at the Christmas music constantly being shoved down my throat. Even at the same time, while I swooned at the magic of our high school choir, I went to an all-girls high school, entering with candles to sing Benjamin Britten's Ceremony of Carols. I loved the pretty lights all around, but I felt left out in the cold, cast away on the island of misfit non-goys. And it really ticked me off when someone assumed that I celebrated Christmas. But when I was in high school, mind you, I was a lousy Jew. I was an atheist from at least the age of 11. I refused to be bat mitzvahed because I knew it would be hypocritical, but definitely identified with being Jewish. And when I was in high school, some of my friends, who were also, half of them were Jewish, started a tradition of exchanging presents before the winter break. And it was very casual and low budget. I didn't feel pressure to buy something for everyone, and certainly none of us had much money to spend. But make no mistake about it, the reason we were exchanging presents was Christmas. So one year, Deborah, one of our friends, who was definitely Christian, but must have seen how conflicted I felt about the holiday, gave me a little brass menorah. It was in a modern 1970s looking design. I was very touched, and I have kept it. Forgot to bring it with me this morning. But when I look at it, besides appreciating the irony of getting a menorah as a Christmas gift, I feel like over the years that sort of is where I started getting permission to let go of fussing about Christmas and to accept that my path of spiritual growth is my own, regardless of whatever the cultural mainstream is. And I guess that I was always a Unitarian Universalist at heart, because there it is in our third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. So now I'm grateful to draw upon an abundance of wisdom traditions to guide me through life. As I've mentioned from this pulpit before, Jewish, Buddhist, Quaker, Unitarian, Universalist, not to mention all the absolutely gorgeous Christian music I've been lucky to sing in choirs over the years, and the medieval art I majored in at university. As you're probably aware, our church and our denomination in general is a rare place where you can identify with, explore, follow, draw on, learn from more than one religious tradition. In fact, that's our expectation. So that's one of the reasons why I support this church as deeply as I can, because this is a haven where you can figure it out and still be in the process of figuring it out. And it's a beautiful thing. So please give generously. There are 4 wonderful ways to give. They'll be posted on the screen. Thank you very much. Oh, got to turn the page, right? Please join me in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. We'll extinguish the chalice. If you have a chalice at home, this is the time to extinguish it. With these words by James Morrison. Within each of our hearts there is a most glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you to understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its ray of hope to those in need in both body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal our world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with the world. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 223, Rock of Ages. And I'd like to thank Pam for stepping in and stepping up to play the piano for us. And thank you, Seth, for your always amazing, gorgeous playing. Thank you. Rock of ages, let our song praise your saving power. You amidst the raging foes were our sheltering tower. Raging they all smelled us, but your arm upheld us, and your word broke their sword when our own strength failed us. Kindling new the holy lambs, priests unbowed by suffering, purified the nation's shrine, brought to God their offering, and in lands surrounding are the joy abounding, happy throngs singing songs with a mighty sounding. Children of the prophet's word, while the free are fettered, wake the echoes of the songs where you may be scattered. Yours the message cheering that the time is nearing, which shall see nations free, tyrants disappearing.
We're going to have a postlude in just a moment. Following the postlude, greet those around you. Join us in the parish hall. You might recall there's a bake sale to sponsor our youth programs, and also a celebration and a raffle related to the auction. So let's have our postlude and greet each other afterwards and join us for the festivities.